Hi, everyone. I'm Shaheen from the Content Mix, and I'm excited to be here with Tom Newcombe, Content Manager for Global Marketing at CWT, a global travel management platform. Thanks so much for being with us today.
No worries. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so you start out just by telling us a bit about your background and how you broke into content marketing.
Yeah, cool. So I currently work at CWT, which is a global travel management company. They're present in 150 countries, huge, like I said, global presence. About 16,000 employees. So I've been there for about 3 years now as the content manager. Just moved into global marketing. And prior to that, I suppose my background was in journalism for about 7 years. Start from magazine journalism to a bit of newspapers, and then I suppose it really kind of kicked off after doing a post grad, and then working my way up through that. And the last job before I got this was for a business travel magazine where I was online editor. So looking back on that, it was a great time. I was there for nearly 4 years, and I don't think I'll have another job like it where you are sort of paid to travel and paid to interview, top people from like business and politics and, some really interesting subjects, and going on press trips to, really nice destinations and staying in places I could never afford, eating at restaurants I can never afford and all that kind of stuff. But I suppose a lot of journalists, they look to make that move into like corporate comms on that kind of side of things. I think just money is obviously a big pull, more sort of job security, things that, it's tough in, any kind of industry where print was always the first. So I kind of, got to part of my life where I started looking at that, and then joined CWT as their UK comms and PR manager, and then progressed into marketing side of things, and now managing the content marketing for the global team. So yeah, it's been a good transition over the sort of 7-8 years.
Yeah, cool. I think people used to say, when I worked in journalism, like I had a really similar trajectory. Yeah. And I think people used to say when you went to corporate, they called it going to the dark side. I don't know. Do people say that in the UK too?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. When I always got that from when they found out I was going.
But I think maybe the attitudes about that have changed a little bit, because I think the nature of corporate comms roles have definitely like evolved as like the whole industry has evolved. I don't know what you think, but
100%. Yeah, I think when I go back into journalism, it was such a clear divide, and it was almost just like a PR and a journalist, and it was you had one side pushing a story and the other person trying to get ahead at more deeper into it. And but now that I do feel that it's the roles of sort of corporate comms as blended quite well, and I think mainly on our side as now as a better understanding really of what a journalist might need for an article, for a piece, and the value I think in not just like pushing something, because the audience now is so aware, because we're surrounded by so much content that you can spot something that's been paid for or pushed or sold so easily. So yeah, I think you're right, the kind of the boundaries are definitely blurred.
Yeah, and like brands are doing a lot more of their own content creation, which is like borderlining on journalism itself in a way.
Exactly. Yeah. And and you have things like at the minute you can't move for webinars, can you? The current situation, and so you're getting people who would appeal to your audience, subject matter experts or leaders within the industry, and you're interviewing them in a corporate comms role, which is a journalism skill and something you would have done.
Mm-hmm. So I mean, can you tell us a bit about what your day-to-day is like in your role, like what you're responsible for and what kind of content you're creating?
Yeah, so I suppose it's split between, I caveat this with, at the minute, it's all upside down, really, with everything that's gone on, but I suppose we can come on to that. But before this, it was, I suppose, the content market split between customer and lead gen content, and that will cover anything from, I suppose, big like quarterly marketing campaigns, lead gen ones, to more like local stuff. We have a lot of events we'll attend, so there's always got to be content from that. So that's, writing presentation decks and scripts for speakers at the event, to the work on the press side of things as well, and then a lot of sort of more sort of local initiatives we do. So I suppose in terms of what content we're creating, I mean, it changes quite a bit, really. Yeah, go on. Sorry.
No, I was gonna say maybe we could just address the big topic right now, which is, I mean, how you're being impacted by COVID-19. Obviously, being in the travel industry, I'm sure very, very impacted. I noticed all of your content seems to be related at the moment. So,
yeah, obviously, being in the travel business is not great at the minute. Like any other company, like any other industry, it's going to be impacted. But travel especially hard. And when you're a company that you make, your majority of your revenues come when people travel. When they're not, is obviously, you're going to have issues. So the teams had to, I mean, we had like an internal message of sort of working without borders, which kind of means that, I mean, the company's not very hierarchical as it is anyway, the culture of it, but literally just there's no kind of hierarchy at all. You've got to work across teams because, like many, there's a lot of sort of leave programs in place and furlough schemes, etc. So, your traditional team and way of working is different. And I suppose our messagings had to change from right at the start, and we've just constantly had to adapt it as we've moved forward. So at the start, February, March, it was all that kind of staying connected and working together, that kind of stuff. But now we're at a stage where our customers are looking to like travel again and getting those travel programs back in place. So it's almost just like we've had to position ourselves as an industry leader, like giving advice and that kind of stuff. But I mean, the hardest thing at the minute is, as an industry, as a travel industry, you don't know exactly how and when that demand's going to pick up. So it's difficult to know really how to position your content because every company's so different as well. I suppose if you're a business like, I don't know, your hairdresser or a mechanic or whatever, that sort of stuff's just going to come back overnight. But for us, it could be end of the year, it could be 2-3 years time.
Right. Can you maybe explain a bit for context, like who your audience is and what kind of travelers you're appealing to?
Yeah, cool. So main audience are travel managers. So they're people at a company, obviously, that would manage and help book the travel. So in its most basic form, we'll book a flight from London to New York and the hotel either side. But there's so many more complexities within that. And so we manage from anything from small companies that might have a dozen salespeople to some of the largest businesses that you can imagine in a certain sector, whether that's tech or pharmaceutical or whatever. One or many of those will probably be our clients. So so they're our main audience, are the travel managers. But then we've also appealed to the actual travelers, the employees themselves, which has also been a big kind of push in within our marketing.
So a very B2B audience. And so what kind of, what's been your approach? What kind of content are you creating that appeals to that audience?
So, I mean, one of the, you're right, we're a B2B audience. So one of the biggest pieces of content we have that I suppose creates the most traction and we get seen the most back offer is a price forecast. Which I know it's tough when you talk about B2B because I see some B2C consumer marketers and you almost get a bit jealous with, oh my God, you work in this like fantastic well-known brand. You've got like budgets to work with influencers and celebrity campaigns and paid for stuff and everything. So it's harder in that respect on the B2B side. So we have this travel forecast, which, is obvious as it sounds. It predicts air and hotel and car rental prices for next year. So if you're a travel manager, you can budget for next year, because you could say, right, international travel is going up 2%. I know how much to alter my budgets with. So that's a really good piece of content that it's worked for a number of months, and then given to the marketing team. And I think it does so well. It sounds obvious, but it does so well because it is a great piece of content. And I think that's one of the things whereas our team focus on, where it's got to be on what your main bit of content is. You could have the best social media campaign and the fantastically written 140 characters, or the best video, or throw a load on it, an influencer or whatever. But if the piece of content you actually weren't trying to push is not strong, then it's not going to go as well. So that's one piece that we do globally, sort of translated across many markets, and we push a lot through press as well. It often gets a lot of national coverage, that kind of stuff. So that's one thing we use, and across multiple parts of the company.
Yeah, that makes sense. How did you guys come up with that idea?
I suppose it was driven from, we've done it for a number of years, like way before my time, but it was driven by what the customer wants, and I think that's always what comes back to it as the heart of everything we put out within marketing. Does the customer do they want this? And there was a clear need for it, because if you're managing a travel program about £500 million spend for 12 months, just like 0.5%, 1 or 2% on airline contracts can save your company hundreds of thousands. So it's so important that the customer gets that kind of data. And as we've got obviously competitors, and they'll be pushing out the similar sort of thing, and so you have to just to make sure you keep up with them as well.
And I guess
they'll go somewhere else.
It's the best content is often the most difficult to create. So I guess putting that extra effort and investment into making something excellent and being kind of the best possible information available on that topic, right?
Yeah, because and then that piece of work is a really kind of a sort of collaborative approach. Like I said, we have a lot of stuff goes through it. There's so many different pieces in it that you can reuse and repurpose. As a company, we, like anything, you work within a tight team. It's not as if we have huge budgets or anything like that. So any piece of really good content we can reuse and repurpose across other stuff throughout the year is good as well. And we're sort of quite strong on that.
I also noticed you guys do some stuff with video, above average, I would say. And you're also highlighting personalities within your company. Is that part of a concerted strategy?
It's good that you say that, because video is one area that we're looking to push more of, I think, and we've used it in the last couple of campaigns. We're fortunate we've got an in-house creative team with some excellent people who are you can work really well with and create some good content. So and on that, on the personality thing, that was just a fun bit of work, where we knew that so many travelers were different, and people were just traditionally, you were bucketing them in, maybe by age, gender, job title, whereas someone's got so many different preferences and desires or whatever when they travel. Everyone's different. So it was about looking at different personality traits across that, to determine how you'd sort of plan your travel program. But we have tried to really push the video. It's tough. to be honest, we found the video, it is hard, I think, because so much, it's quite time consuming to, there's a lot of sort of logistics. You've got to make sure, we've got people all around the world. So for one video, we had to have, this guy flew in from, I think it was Norway, or it could have been Sweden, to our London office. You got to time that up, book flights, make sure it can align with the filming guys. You've got your 1 or 2 weeks editing back and forward for essentially like a 1-minute video that you don't know how much value it's going to get. And when you can, how easy is it just to put to an email? So yeah, if it is, we are trying to push more video, but it's it's a harder thing to do, I think.
Yeah, definitely. For B2B, finding like where's the right, like where does video fit into the mix is a little more challenging, I suppose.
Exactly.
But, yeah. So you were mentioning that you switched roles recently to a global role. What does that mean exactly? Like you were doing content for certain markets, and now you're kind of coordinating across more markets?
Yeah. Basically, so started out, so when it was like the UK PR and comms role, that's still sat under marketing then, and then it kind of split, where the offer of the content marketing so it was the EMEA region, so mainly across Europe, and so yeah, that was working literally just with countries within Europe. So a lot of messaging comes down from the global team, and then you'll either tweak it, repurpose it to fit that audience. Because like a travel manager in Germany probably has different needs from a travel manager in Spain, for example. So it was working across that, and there was different things like we got a European travel publication we put out, but into the global team. So one, you're working a lot with the sort of the bigger, larger global clients as well. So there's that, and you almost sort of dictating the strategy and content that's going to filter down for the rest of the company. So and just the scope's massive. Obviously, you're getting used to having calls at odd times with people in Australia or Brazil or North America.
Yeah, because you guys are literally in every region in the world, right? I think I saw
that's right, yeah,
some countries. Yeah.
Yeah, present like 100, maybe 150, I think it is. And that's been one of like a thing to get used to. The fact that most of the people I speak to on a regular basis, I've never actually met in person. Like I've, manager in Spain, colleagues in Netherlands, in Chicago, in Minneapolis, and, Australia is a regular one at the minute. So yeah, it's fun, but yeah, it's gonna be tough.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, now working from home, I guess then hasn't changed that much for you, your dynamic with your team, if you're all over the world anyway.
That's right. Yeah, the home working thing for me at the minute, it hasn't, to be honest, with the whole lockdown, it hasn't changed my day to day too much, because like the company as itself promotes remote working, flexible working, probably better than most I know of. And I'm not just saying that, it's, they're really great with that. And because we're based all around the world, yeah, like I've got a London office that I go into, but it's not necessary really. It's a lot of times you go in and then you're just locking yourself in a room and doing video calls. So I was working from home anyway, sort of 3-4 days a week. So that side of things doesn't get too much used to, but yeah, it can be hard. I think what I find with content marketing, a bit like I did with journalism, you need that when you're thinking of ideas and generating stuff. It works so much easier when you're with people around you, where stuff can be a bit more spontaneous. It'd be harder, right? We've got an hour call or an hour meeting to come up with some ideas, so it's almost very forced. Whereas if you're just sitting next to someone, day after day, you just bounce around ideas and you just talk and you go for lunch or drinks after work or whatever. And I find that the ideas come from that. So that is the hardest thing, a job that's very creative, and to have that creative mindset when you're quite like structured in the conversations you have to create that stuff.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that. I'm in the same boat for sure. Let's go into the rapid fire recommendations, we call it. This is just asking you a few questions about your recommendations. It doesn't have to be that rapid, but what's an app or a tool that you can't work without?
Recently, it's been it's like a piece of software. It's called Crayon, which is like a competitive intelligence tool. So it essentially just gives me daily updates of what all my competitors are putting out. So whether that's just an email they've sent, a product update, a social media post, everything. And at we're all talking about the same thing. We're probably all having the same sort of tone of voice, using the same, webinar, podcasts, ebooks, etc. So that at the minute is invaluable. It it ensures we're not kind of not talking about stuff that our competitor put out about a month ago. That is something
that's really cool. It's called Crayon, you said.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's others, but that's the kind of company one we use.
Yeah, very cool. And then any marketing influencer that you follow or recommend?
Yeah, so there's a I've forgotten her name now.
I think she's called
Anne. So she's called Anne, right? Anne Handley. That's it. Yeah, sorry.
You mentioned it earlier, so
so Anne Handley. So these sort of people are quite important for me. I mean, when you said the question, and I was thinking about it, it did resonate because I've only been in this marketing role, and I suppose I've moved in quite a senior position, even though I've only been in marketing for a few years. So, I think because there's so many transferable skills, as we talked about in journalism, but there's a lot of like basic fundamental marketing things I'm still learning. So having people like her is great, and she has this blog that is called something like Son of Anarchy, or some pun on anarchy with the word Anne, and that's just good. And she writes in such plain English, which resonates so much with me because that's all I got drilled home for a decade and working journalism. No fancy words, no business, the important stuff at the top, less important stuff at the bottom, all this kind of stuff. And I was amazed when I came into the business world how little that kind of meant. And so she really pushes that. And the way she writes her blogs and everything like that is, and she just has some great tips and stuff. So I'd recommend following her. I just follow her on Twitter, and she just often pops up and blog arrives once a week.
I've followed some of her stuff, but I have one of her books on my Kindle, and I haven't read it yet. So it's a reminder to finally read it. But yeah, no, it's really relevant. I think she has something institute online for marketing. I forget exactly what it's called, actually. I'll put it in a link in the blog.
Okay.
But anyway, and then any valuable event in Europe or anywhere?
Yeah, so one I went to last year, and I assume it's obviously not going to be on this year, but it's called Festival Marketing. So that was in London, and I just found it so valuable. There was, as I mentioned before, just trying to pick up as much knowledge as I can. And there were some great speakers there, but I was more interested in, because of the B2B angle. I mean, I think there was a head of marketing from, really great, cool brands like Lab Bible, or some like cool tech startup, or this kind of stuff. But it was more the content manager for some tech software firm, or there was a guy there, and he was the content manager for a company that designed like tools for hospitals and medical tools and stuff. And so that was his job, to like market to, the medical world about medical instruments. And I thought, how tough is that? And he went, talking about, you don't have some celebrity on Instagram, promoting that kind of stuff. So just learning the skills he did in the speeches from that I found invaluable. And then there were some really good keynotes, and if it was on, I think it was meant to be on October, but like I said, I assume it's not. So next year, I'd recommend that highly. I don't know if it's a global thing, but for me, I just took so much from it.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, definitely check that out. And yeah, we'll put links to all these things on the blog version. We do a blog summary of all the podcasts. So, to end the interview, do you have any parting advice for other content marketers in Europe?
I suppose the main bit of advice that I'd give would make sure the piece it sounds obvious, make sure the piece of content you're pushing is really strong and it's something your customers or prospects really want. Don't just rely on a budget, kind of push yourself as if you didn't have that budget, if you weren't able to do an amazing paid campaign on social, or some great ebook. Sort of really focus on the piece of content you've got, and then the other stuff that surrounds it, the tools you might push it on, the podcast you might promote it on, or the webinar, that kind of stuff comes second. And I think don't get hung up too much on the little things, because if you've got a great piece of content, I suppose your audience will forgive you for the odd headline that doesn't sound quite right, or do I say dear client, do I say dear customer, do I say to whatever, all that kind of little stuff that you spend all your time doing. If the content is strong, then they'll forgive you for that. So that would be the main bit of advice.
Yeah, I think that definitely speaks to this bigger trend we're seeing of like quality over quantity. I think it used to be a few years ago or a decade ago maybe that it was all about SEO and putting out as much content as possible. And definitely recently there's been a move to, Google's gotten smarter. That doesn't really work so well anymore. And it's about getting traction and people sharing what you're doing and actually engaging with it, right? So
exactly. And I don't, you're right. And don't rely on, that's correct.
Yeah. So a few really good pieces of content are better than 100 bad ones, I suppose.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, or mediocre, maybe we should say. Anyway, our time is about up. So thank you so much for joining us on the podcast.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's great. Really enjoyed hearing your perspective.
Thank you for your time.
And thanks everyone else for listening in. For more perspectives on the content marketing industry in Europe, check out thecontentmix.com and keep tuning in for interviews like this one every weekday on the podcast. See you next time.
Thank you.